In this video, we're going to talk about the inspector monitor. To make this demo more interesting, let's dispatch a few more actions. So I'm going to add 2 more bugs, bug 2 and bug 3, and then I'm going to resolve the first bug, the bug with the ID 1, okay? So these are the actions that we have dispatched. Now, if you don't see these, right-click anywhere and select Reload Frame. So here's the init action that was dispatched by Redux at 11:27. This is the time of my machine. Now, right after this, we have 4 actions that were dispatched 0 seconds after the first action, okay? So here are the actions. We can always filter them. So if you have a lot of actions, we can quickly look up an action. Now, on the right side, we have a few tabs. The Action tab shows information about the currently selected action. So here we have the bug resolved action because that is the last action that was applied. We can go back in time and select any of the action, let's say the first bug added action. Now you can see your action object. So this object has 2 properties, type and payload. Pretty straightforward. We can also see this action object visually on a chart. So Redux DevTools call this object state, but it's actually the action object. This action object has 2 properties, type and payload. Payload is an object with a description property. Pretty straightforward. We can also see this object as raw JSON data, okay? Now, the state tab shows the state after this action has been applied. So after we create the first bug, our array of bugs has a single bug object. Here's the state after we dispatch the second action. We get a new object in this array, okay? Now, the diff tab is pretty useful. It shows you how the state is changed. For example, after we dispatch the second action, we see a change in our array of bugs. So in this array, the object at this index, index 1, which is the second object in this array, becomes this object. Let's look at another example. After we dispatch this action, you can see that we have a change in the object at index 0. So in this object, the resolve property becomes true. So with these 3 tabs, you can easily debug your Redux applications. For example, let's say you launch your application and expect to see the number 1 on the screen, but you see the number 2. How can you identify the source of problem? Well, first you open up Redux DevTools. On the left, you look at the list of actions that were dispatched. First, you make sure that the right action was dispatched. If not, that means you should dispatch that action. Now, what if the action is dispatched? Well, you look at the Action tab to make sure that action was carrying the right data. If not, you need to modify your action creator because that is the function that is responsible for creating this object, right? Now, what if our action has the right data? Well, then we look at the State tab. We check to see if the state is updated properly. If the state is complex, we can use the Diff tab to see what exactly was changed. If the state is not updated properly, that means we have a problem in our reducer because that is the building block that is responsible for updating the state. So you can see debugging Redux application is very easy with Redux DevTools. Now, the Trace tab shows what piece of code dispatched the currently selected action. We'll talk about it in the next lesson. And finally, the Test tab generates a basic boilerplate for testing this action. We'll talk about testing in the future.